Today, we're going to start with a controversial social media post and journey back 80 years to a war that reshaped the world. A few days ago, on September 3, 2025, China held a military parade to commemorate the 80th anniversary of its victory in the war against Japan and the end of World War II. In that context, U.S. President Donald Trump posted the following message, and I'll read it for you. The big question to be answered is whether or not President Xi of China will mention the massive amount of support and blood that the United States of America gave to China in order to help it to secure its freedom from a very unfriendly foreign invader. Many Americans died in China's quest for victory and glory. I hope that they are rightfully honored and remembered for their bravery and sacrifice. In the noisy political landscape of the century, President has suddenly pulled our focus back 80 years. He mentioned massive support for China and American blood that was shed. For many listeners, this might sound unfamiliar. When we talk about World War II, American memories are mostly of Pearl Harbor, D-Day, and aircraft carrier battles in the Pacific. We were fighting Japan in the Pacific, weren't we? Weren't we in Europe? The truth is, in that war, there was another front, a front almost entirely forgotten by the Western world. It was a front where American pilots flew over the highest mountains on Earth, where an American general clashed fiercely with China's leader, and where the seeds of today's complex U.S.-China relationship were sown. This is the history Trump was talking about, and today we're going to uncover this long-lost story. Our story begins before Pearl Harbor. As early as 1937, Japan had launched a full-scale invasion of China. For years, China fought almost entirely alone, single-handedly resisting the ferocious expansion of an Axis power. To the Western world at the time, it was a distant battlefield in the Far East. And back in the United States, isolationist sentiment was running high. People were tired of war and unwilling to get entangled in any more overseas conflicts. But that's when a key figure entered the stage. His name was Claire Lee Chennault, a visionary but cantankerous retired U.S. Army Air Corps captain. He went to China and saw with his own eyes how the Chinese Air Force was being decimated by the vastly superior Japanese military. But he believed that with the right tactics and the right planes, the Chinese had a real chance to punch above their weight. A retired American pilot, thousands of miles from home, trying to convince Washington to help a country most Americans couldn't find on a map against an enemy America was not yet at war with. It sounded like a fantasy. But with President Roosevelt's tacit approval, a secret project was launched. The U.S. government looked the other way as Chennault recruited active-duty American military pilots to go to China as civilian volunteers and form a new Air Corps. That unit would become world-famous as the Flying Tigers. The Flying Tigers flew P-40 fighter jets. They painted iconic shark mouths on the noses of their planes, which became a nightmare for Japanese pilots. These young American men, using aircraft that were far from the top of the line, achieved a stunning combat record using Chennault's innovative hit-and-run tactics. One Flying Tiger wrote in his diary, "We are fighting in the skies of a foreign land for the freedom of another country. On the ground below, 400 million people are looking up at us." Their presence was more than just a military victory. It was an enormous spiritual boost to the Chinese soldiers and civilians who were in a state of despair. Then Pearl Harbor was attacked, and the United States officially declared war on Japan. Soon after, an even greater challenge emerged. In 1942, the Japanese army cut off the last land route connecting China to the Allies, the Burma Road. China became a massive, isolated island. How could they continue to support this allied nation of 400 million people? The answer was daring, terrifying, and almost suicidal: to fly over the Himalayas. This was the infamous Hump airlift. In the 1940s, with no radar and no precision navigation, pilots flew heavy transport planes over the roof of the world. They faced horrific storms with winds up to 200 miles per hour, temperatures that could ice over a plane's wings in an instant, and violent, unpredictable turbulence. And of course, there were Japanese fighters waiting to intercept them. The route was saturated with death. So many planes crashed that the sun glinting off the metal wreckage scattered across the valleys below earned it a grim nickname from the pilots: the Aluminum Trail. This is the reality behind Trump's words of support. According to post-war statistics, the U.S. lost over 500 aircraft and more than 1,500 pilots and crew members on this route alone. And the blood he mentioned was shed by more than just pilots. Beyond the dogfights in the sky, an equally brutal battle was being waged on the ground to reopen that lifeline. Tens of thousands of soldiers from the Chinese Expeditionary Force, trained and armed by the Americans, marched into the treacherous jungles of Burma. They fought shoulder to shoulder with American ground troops, like the famed Merle's Marauders. Through endless rain, deadly diseases, and ferocious Japanese resistance, Chinese and American soldiers charged through mud together, starved together, and died together. During the war, an American named Jacob DeShazer parachuted out of his plane after bombing Tokyo and landed in a rice paddy in East China. His ankle was severely injured. He couldn't speak the language. He was terrified, and he could be captured by Japanese patrols at any moment. But local Chinese villagers found him, and, at the immense risk of their entire village being massacred, they hid him. The villagers gave him their most precious food at the time: eggs and rice. Stories like this happened dozens of times in China's Zhejiang and Jiangxi provinces in 1942. After that one bombing raid, a total of 64 American airmen were rescued by ordinary Chinese civilians. These rescues went beyond simple American aid. This was a true alliance, fighting shoulder to shoulder. In retaliation, the Japanese army launched a brutal campaign across these regions, killing tens of thousands of Chinese civilians. After the smoke of World War II cleared, peace did not come to China. The Chinese Civil War erupted, and the nationalist government, backed by the U.S., was ultimately defeated. A few years later, the Korean War broke out. The Allies, who had fought side by side in World War II, had become enemies on the battlefield. This dramatic reversal is precisely why this history of immense American sacrifice in China was so quickly forgotten in the collective memory of the West. It didn't fit the black and white narrative of the Cold War. A once heroic story suddenly became awkward and inconvenient, so it was quietly tucked away in the attic of history. So now let's return to where we started. When Donald Trump brings up this history, he is touching on a very real truth. The massive support was real, and the sacrifice of blood was real. Just a few days ago, on September 5, 2025, at the Memorial Hall of the Anti-Japanese Air Force Martyrs in Nanjing, China, 14 new names of American airmen were added to the Wall of Heroes. This brought the total number of American martyrs confirmed and engraved there to 2,605. Beyond the swirl of political rhetoric, a group of people has never stopped searching, correcting, and adding to the record. What they are doing is to remember history and to remember these young men who sacrificed their lives in a foreign land. So, if you ever find yourself in China, in the city of Nanjing. Go and see the memorial wall for yourself.